Despite a known $3 billion deficit, state leaders increased taxes and shifted costs to counties while claiming to support affordable housing. After this session was completed, it was learned that the General Assembly had approved changes to the Office of the Archives budget that will have the effect of raising closing costs for homebuyers by $300 to $500. Stacey, this issue has gotten little attention. The Maryland State Archives, an office that reports directly to the governor, will begin charging 20 cents per page to view or print land records on Maryland land records, a service that was previously free. Not even DC does this, Stacey. This is a real change here. The fee comes despite existing public funding through the Land Records Improvement Fund and state transfer taxes. What's going on here?
Casey, this has to do with our leadership, if you want to call it that, because I don't even think that they're leaders. I feel like they're political survivors and opportunists. And this is what you get with one party rule. When only one side controls the agenda, dissenting voices are silenced, and this is the kind of thing that you get. There's a lack of transparency here. I didn't even know about this issue until yesterday when I had a settlement. I'm a realtor, and the title attorney told me about it. And for the viewers out there, they need to understand that when they buy or sell a property, the title attorney needs to do what is the equivalent of an x-ray on a property to make sure that there are no liens or encumbrances on it, what we call clear title, Casey, as you well know. They do this by an in-depth research via those land records, which heretofore, as you just mentioned, have been free. But this research protects the consumer by keeping the risk of failure or future liability and lawsuits to a minimum. Now, that doesn't mean that attorneys will stop doing their due diligence. It's just going to cost them more money. And this gets passed on to the consumers. So how does this tie into affordable housing? It doesn't. You know, one of the big issues that you had mentioned before, this is bad. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for affordable housing. And it's really, I think, unfair the way that they went about it.
So, Mike, I'm going to lead to you, but I'm going to give one general comment about this. This is a perfect example of the law of unintended consequences, because the General Assembly was looking for a way to raise funds. But the most alarming part of this, there were no public hearings, no input from stakeholders like realtors, lawyers, abstractors, bankers. There was a closed-door budget meeting and a budget footnote decision between the governor's office and the General Assembly. This, they want to find additional funding, but all of this is going to be done is passing additional costs onto the home buyer.
I would just say, first of all, I think we'll revisit the concept of inability to voice dissent later on in the broadcast when we get to other topics that we'll address.
You can dissent all you want, Mike.
No, I know I can, but the notion between parties. The reality, I think, here, though, I think the part that we're struggling with is, and I can't disagree that the legislature had a $3 billion hole that they were trying to address. To your point, Casey, oftentimes when they do this, and in the 25 years I've been watching and paying attention, they oftentimes those budgets come down to the closed door discussions at the very end, and a lot of things happen in the room that come out later and go, wow, that was interesting. I think one of the real challenges that we are confronting is, and I think the state has a challenge. We didn't really address the $3 billion, so they raised taxes. I think the sales tax on IT services is going to really come back and bite people in the butt. I think it's going to have a very significant impact on our state economy. I think the provision you're discussing, and I just don't think that there is a broad understanding of the impact of decisions on businesses. And I don't think that we have enough people in our legislature who actually come from a business background that can bring that perspective to the table. And as we've talked on this show previously, I mean, one of the vice chairs of the committee, who was a Democrat, who has an IT business, is actually having to move his company from Southern Maryland across the river into Virginia in order to remain competitive and keep his contracts. And I think that is a real challenge. Clearly the state and our leadership have to have a better understanding of the implications of what they're doing. And quite honestly, even the cuts were really just passing resources, passing responsibilities back to the local jurisdictions, and then giving them the ability to increase their taxes locally to be able to then cover the cuts that they just cut, which weren't really cuts. So, I mean, there was a lot of moving around this year, but I don't think much that actually really benefits the state and allows us to grow, unfortunately.
Yeah, Mike, you bring up a great topic and about the sales tax on IT services. There were hearings both in the Senate and the House. I testified before the House committee on that day because our industry had a proposed tax on it. But there were 7 hours of testimony in each chamber, and it allowed the stakeholders the opportunity to point out what these costs were going to be and how they would impact the general public. In this instance, there were no hearings. They didn't even reach out to the stakeholders. Mm-hmm. They didn't reach out to the clerk's office in the courts to find out what impact this would have. They didn't reach out to their own state agency that they share fees with. I mean, this assault on transparency has got to stop. People have got to be able to voice an opinion. I know I'm on a soapbox. I'm upset about this. I'm on the Legislative Affairs Committee for the Maryland Land Title Association. I'm co-chair. And there, one company reported to me that it's going to cost them $36,000 a year for their abstractors to do work in Maryland. They're not eating those costs. Those costs are going to be passed on to the consumer. And this is just abstractors, surveyors, lawyers, realtors. I mean, I spent an hour online on Maryland land records yesterday just trying to figure out a simple transfer of a deed from a mother to her daughter to make sure that she wasn't, and to have an additional charge on top of that. These land records were supposed to be in the public interest.
Well, you obviously both in this industry and have better perspective than I do. But I think given the changes that are impacting us locally, the decisions that were made at the state legislature, and given the federal impact of the economic decisions that are being made there, clearly the impact on individuals across the state and across the country, there are no costs that are going down. Everything is increasing, and everybody wants to point a finger in a different direction.
Stacey, any last thoughts? We got about 30 seconds left.
Casey, I'm on your side entirely on this, and I just feel like it's very shameful for the state legislature to behave this way. And if we're talking about this particular issue, what are the other ones that they've snuck in that we don't know about yet?
Well, that's what we have to do, our own due diligence.